Welcome back, everybody. In our last lesson, we learned how to build the blues scale that was derived from a minor pentatonic scale. And today we're going to learn how to build it as it's derived from a major pentatonic scale. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's start by populating these scales. And so we want to start with A minor, which will give us A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and back to A. A minor pentatonic, we strip out degrees 2 and 6 to get this result. And A blues, we take the A minor pentatonic and we go ahead and add in a note to get this end result. Now moving on, let's see if we can build it using C major. So the C major scale is going to have these notes, our easiest scale in the world. C major pentatonic, we're going to strip out degrees 4 and 7 relative to the C major scale. And our C blues then, we're going to have a note that's going to be added in. Well, let's see, we can see that the note that was added in up here, it was a D sharp note, and so that's going to end up being in between degrees 2 and 3. G, A, back to C. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put some quotations around this. C blues in quotations. Now the reason why we did that is because we wanted to see, well, when I'm in A minor or A minor pentatonic, we know where that note is supposed to go. We know, where this comes. We discussed it last time that it's going to come in between degrees 3 and 4 relative to A minor pentatonic scale. And we kind of discussed that at length, that you have to be very careful when you're talking about the relativeness of these scale degrees, because if I discussed it in terms of A minor, it's no longer 3 and 4, is it? It's really between 4 and 5. All right, so in terms of C major, that D sharp or E flat note is going to come in between 2 and 3. So let's just make a little side note over here that D sharp is between 2 and 3. And now moving on, let's kind of look at this, and we understand that this is sort of like the minor perspective up here. And this up here is sort of like the major perspective. Okay. And then, so overall, we really could say that the top is, in a sense, it's kind of relative to the bottom. Okay. So this is these are sort of relative to each other, right? And why are we saying that they're relative? Well, just look at the notes that are inside of them. And the notes are exactly the same. If I look at these notes and I look at the notes that are down here that I underlined down here, they're the same notes, okay? But we did that because we really wanted to find out that the D sharp, the blue note, so to speak, is going to be between degrees 2 and 3 for major. Okay, now let's go ahead and discuss things in a more parallel kind of concept. And to do that, we're going to start with A major. And this is where we really get to see some interesting stuff. So A major, then I want to do the same thing here with A major pentatonic, and finally A blues. And let's put that kind of what we did before in quotes, exactly how we did before with C. If I populate this very quickly, we'll have something like this. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, back to A. Our A major pentatonic. Once again, we're stripping out 4 and 7. So that would give us something like this. And then finally, our blues would give us this. Okay. And this is where things get a little strange, because at this point, you should definitely notice something. So the thing you should notice here is A blues, we'll call this A blues sub 1 and A blues sub 2. They're not the same scale, right? You could see that we have no B, and this one has a B. A blues sub 2 has a B. Up at top, we have our chromatic line is D, D sharp, and E. Down here, it's B, C, and C sharp. Up above, we don't have an F or any kind of an F, and it goes G and A. Down below, we have an F sharp, and no G. So these scales really could not be more different. There's tons of differences. So then the real question is, well, what in the world is the bottom one? If the top one is A blues and the bottom one is A blues, then which one is the right one? And it turns out that they're actually both A blues, but we have to be specific. Instead of calling A blues 1, A blues 2, we should really come up with a new notation. And we really should say that the top one is going to be A blues minor and that the bottom is A blues major. Now there's some major problems with this as well. One of the big issues is if you talk to anyone in, music kind of industry, right? Guitarists and pianists, and if you talk to other musicians, no one is going to talk to you about A blues minor and A blues major. And in fact, they might look at you funny if you do. That's because when people talk about blues, the blues scale, they're almost always deriving it from a minor pentatonic scale, okay? So it's a really big deal. If somebody says, oh, the A blues scale, in your mind, this needs to go off like an alarm bell. Not this, which is why I put this whole thing in quotation. So why did I bring it up? Well, that's because it is a relevant idea as you study it more. The other thing to understand is that this is probably not technically, but it's also maybe best understood to be F sharp blues is the way people would really understand it. So you could really kind of think of this one down here as being A blues major or F sharp blues. So A blues major is maybe a better kind of way of really describing what's going on. F sharp blues is more the layman's term, and this is what really everyone is going to discuss things as. Up here, A blues minor, or if you just called it A blues, would be just sufficient as well.